welcome to Author Nation. I am Melody, I'm the host. Author Nation takes you from idea to published book, and you are here today because you want to be a successful nonfiction author. And part of that is having an email list. Although so many authors don't have email lists, what is that about? We are here today to change that. I am here with Igor Kafetz. He is the Amazon best-selling author of List Building Lifestyle, Confessions of an Email Millionaire. Igor has semi-retired in his late 20s, thanks to building multiple income streams of income with email marketing. And now is back from retirement to teach others how to build six-figure email side hustles, working from anywhere in the world. Where are you working from today?
I'm working from my basement here in Toronto, Canada.
Awesome. So I don't know if you know, I grew up in Ontario. So before the show, you just told me a little bit of some exciting news. Do you mind sharing that?
Yeah, absolutely. It's an exciting time for my family. I'm twice an immigrant. My family moved once from Ukraine to Israel and then from Israel to Canada. And so I got an email earlier this week from the government saying that I'm invited to my oath of citizenship in a few weeks, which means I'm this close to getting my Canadian passport.
Okay, so let me be the first person. I'm in Vancouver, British Columbia. I'm also Canadian. So let me be the first person to welcome you to Canada officially as a Canadian citizen. You can vote and, you know, all the other things, travel on a Canadian passport. So well done. Welcome. This is super exciting. And one of the reasons I'm going to just straight up, one of the reasons I invited you is I was looking for someone who had like a huge email list. And honestly, I was looking at, so I'm in some directories, and in the directories, they tell you how large people's email lists are. And yours was the largest email list by far. So you are here to help us figure out how we can do that too. So I guess let's start with basics, because actually a lot of authors don't have email lists. So just, can you answer this? Why should I have an email list if I'm an author? Why?
It's real simple. You really have to imagine when you have an email list, it's like you're sitting on a big button that will send instant quality traffic to anywhere you want. And again, just as easy as pressing that send button to your email list. So when I launched my book, I already had a bunch of courses, and my focus wasn't my book. The book was something I wanted to do for many, many years, but never had the balls to do it really. I was afraid, because who am I to write a book? You know what I mean? Like, for my whole life, I've been reading books by Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn and Brian Tracy and Tim Ferriss and Robert Kiyosaki. They changed my life, but I never felt that I have it in me. Like, I knew I had something to say. I felt I didn't have the authority or the credibility to become an author. But when I finally worked up the courage to do it, and I had my list, what it allowed me to do was quite simple: make it an instant bestseller. Because all I had to do is just email my followers, email my list, and say, hey guys, look, in 2 days time, my book is going live on Amazon. And what I want you to do is get the Kindle version, then get the physical version, then forward me your receipts, and I'll send you a big bonus for that. And so I did that. And instantly, overnight, I sold a couple of thousand copies of my book, turning it into an instant bestseller. Because most authors on Amazon, if I'm correct, they sell, I think, about 100 copies a year. So that instantly put me in the top of my category, actually several categories. And what's interesting is that week, Gary Vee launched a book too. And I actually outranked his book as well. So it was all thanks to the list. It's not because my title was the best title, or that I had an influence or whatever. Like, it was just me being able to send an email to a bunch of people and say, hey guys, thanks for supporting me. We're publishing a book, and I would really appreciate if you bought the book or got the book. It's great just on its own, but I'm also going to give you a bonus. If I didn't have a list, I would have never been able to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, Gary Vee is super savvy. So beating him is something, that's something, right? Being able to beat Gary Vee, because he is a super savvy marketer. So let's, so email lists in general. Can we, because I'd like to talk about the benefits of email lists in general, and then I'd like to kind of move it specifically to authors. So let's just talk about email lists in general. What are like the 3 benefits of an email list?
You know, first, the one that's most important for me, the one that I find to be most useful, most valuable, is the sense of control.
Mm.
Because I don't know if you've had this experience, but I've had the experience of waking up and having my Facebook ads account shut down. I even lost my personal Facebook account as a result of same sort of wave of bans that they do when they don't like you and they don't like the ads you run, so they completely get you off the platform. I have several friends, for example, my buddy Charles, who was just interviewing from our podcast a couple of weeks ago. You know, he had a great YouTube channel with like over 200,000 subscribers. And then he woke up one day and he received a bunch of messages on Instagram from his friends and followers. They're like, "Hey, dude, where's your channel? What have I can't find your videos." Turns out YouTube decided that they didn't like him anymore and they just kicked him out. But the good thing for Charles is that he built an email list off of that channel. He didn't publish any books, any physical books, but he had a few digital books, ebooks. And as a result, he was able to sustain himself and to continue to make money, pay the bills, and communicate with his tribe through email. So to me, an email list is probably the only media left right now that you actually control. Because if you're using any platform other than having your own email list, you're actually not in control. Maybe if you have physical addresses of your followers and you can mail them a newsletter, but let's face it, there's a handful of people who would do something like that. It's expensive and it's really hard.
Yeah.
With email, it's really, really easy. And even if you lose access to an email platform, you can always export your contacts and you can put them into a different software to email them. Now, the other benefit of list building is that it's kind of like a tree, right? You plant the seed, it starts growing, you nurture it. It might not produce results right away because it's planting the roots underground, then it starts growing, faster over time. But you're growing this asset that pays you more and more every year. Between 2014 and 2016, my income actually went from $600,000 a year to 1.8 million a year, and I did not work more hours. I did not work more intensely in those hours. It was only because my list continued to grow, and the more my email list grew, I just had to stick to the same routine of actually mailing the list, and my income continued to grow because the leverage you get with list building is incredible. Which brings me to another point. You see, whether you have a list of 100 people, 1,000 people, or 10,000 people, it's going to take you the exact same amount of time and effort to email them, because all you do is you copy and paste your email creative, whatever you want to send them, into the email sending software called an autoresponder. And the autoresponder is the one who's sending, not you. You don't sit there. A lot of people think that if I have a list of 100,000 people, I need to copy and paste my message 100,000 times. That's not the case. You only put it in once, and then the software starts sending it out automatically. So whether there's 100 people on my list, or 1,000, or 10,000, or 100,000, it takes me the exact 10 minutes to sit down, write an email, and blast. Now, the difference, though, in the money you can make and the reach you can have and the authority you can have and the influence you can have when you have an audience of 100,000 people at your fingertips is substantially different. But the key is that you don't end up working more hours or working more intensely, because your asset, your email list, is the asset that you're able to leverage through automation.
Yeah, yeah. And I really like that image of a tree. And I have a follow-up question on that, because I've heard and I've read, if they don't buy from you within the first, I don't know, 6 emails or the first 3 weeks or the first whatever, then you've lost them. And well, thank you. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, that's totally not true. And I learned it on my own experience. I used to believe that, and somebody told me 14 days. That's what I've been taught when I started with list building. I've been told 14 days, either you close that sale, you move them over the fence, or don't waste your time. But that's such bad advice. You see, the passage of time is really important when it comes to influence and connection, especially when you're trying to get somebody to like you and trust you.
Mm.
There's a book, I don't remember its name, but it's a book by an FBI agent who used to try and convert people, or you know what I mean, like when they
Yep.
were like KGB spies and things like that.
Yep.
So
Influencers.
he describes the process of converting somebody by first spending 6 months having coffee or grabbing coffee in the same coffee shop as that other person. And he explains that he did it because he wanted to become familiar, like just visually familiar to that person he wanted to recruit. So with the list, I find it to be true as well. A lot
Mm.
of them will get on your list, and even for several months, they'll just be like flies on the wall. They'll read some emails, but not all. They'll be seeing your name in their inbox. They might not even be paying much attention, but you'll be appearing there all the time. Every time, every morning they wake up, they check their email. There's an Igor in that inbox. The next day, the next day, the next day. And so one time, I remember getting an email from somebody who became a customer, and the email stated, and I'm paraphrasing, but this is the meaning of it: Igor, you finally got me. I've been on your list for 8 months. I've been resisting the urge to buy, but this last email you sent about something, I don't remember what it was, but it was maybe some kind of personal story I told. This last email, it got me.
Mm.
So it's like, they waited for so long. And then I started noticing the same thing by other people who were big into list building. One guy, for example, his name is Jeff Walker. He's the creator of the product launch formula, which I'm sure a lot of people heard of. So I'm not like connected with him directly or anything, but sometimes his videos will pop on my YouTube channel, on my YouTube page. And I remember he posted this one video a couple of years back that said there was this one person on his email list that was getting his emails for 4 years until they finally decided to buy from him. So this is very, very common, very common.
Mhm.
And so when you're building your list, you really treat it like an asset. You really treat it like a tree, like an apple tree. Think about it this way: it's an apple tree that you're going to harvest every year.
Yeah.
Only instead of harvesting it once a year, from what I've been noticing, my cycle is about three months or so. Every 90 days, I'll have green apples turn red and ready for picking, and then the next cycle, the next cycle, the next cycle.
Hmm. Yeah, good advice. And I like how you put that, because I hear a lot of that. Look, you sell them right away or forget it. And I think of an email list as something as a long-term asset, right? So sometimes people are like thinking about writing a book, but they're not ready and they're on my email list. And 2 years later, like, it's time. And I've been there for 2 years. I've been supporting them for 2 years. So I just thank you for that. I really, really appreciate that. So we talked about the general benefits of email lists. Are there any specific benefits that you want to mention for authors?
Yeah, I think an author with an email list is a much more influential and authoritative author. I think it gives you lots of leverage. Just the
Mhm.
other day, I think it was, yeah, mid last week, I was taking part in a JV mixer where it was authors only. And what does an author want? Author wants their book to go in front of an audience, right? Author wants to spread the word about the book. So when you come in and you connect with other authors, and a lot of them are best-selling authors, a lot of them have been building an audience for many, many years, and a lot of them have books that are kind of related, or at least within the same niche that you are, or subcategories of a wider niche. Then one of the easiest ways for you to take your book in front of a bigger audience would be to have them notify their email list about the book, and
Yeah.
for you to do the same to your list. And you can create a book swap, an
Yeah.
exchange of value, right? Not to mention, of course, that the next time you launch a book is going to be so much easier for you to make it into a bestseller. Not to mention, and this is, I mean, this is something I've heard. This is something I haven't necessarily seen in my life because I never published a book with any big publishing house like Penguin Publishing or whatever. But I'm pretty sure if you approach a publisher and you say, "Here's the outline of my book. Oh, and by the way, I've got an email list of 10,000 people," then that publisher will be more likely to say
Mm.
yes to you because you come with an audience. Like I did hear this several times that publishing houses want authors with audiences, to kind of give preference to those. But again, I haven't published a book with any big publisher. I self-published mine, so I don't know if that's like 100% true.
Yeah, well, absolutely. So okay, and you may not know the answer to this, but why don't people have email lists? Like, do you have any insight into, why is it that if it's such a good idea, authors and entrepreneurs aren't doing it?
You know, everybody knows they need it. Like
Yeah.
when you mention it to people, everybody be like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But I just think, just like with most things, including writing a book, they don't know how to get started. They don't know the first thing they
Mhm.
need to do. And the other part of it, in my opinion, is they're afraid of the technical aspect
Mhm.
of putting together an email capturing page,
Yeah.
aka the squeeze page, because it squeezes the email.
Yeah.
And they're a bit afraid of the email autoresponder software, the
Mhm.
software that sends the emails out,
Yeah.
whether automatic or to any particular segment of your audience. I find that a lot of people kind of get lost with it. They're kind of afraid of it, and authors in general, not everyone, but in general, they just want to do what they're good at. So if it's a
Mhm.
coach and consultant with a groundbreaking idea in their industry, that's what they want to focus on. To them, it feels like if they are now going to get into list building, it's going to be like a whole other world that they need to
Mhm.
master. Now, the reality, of course, is very different. The reality is you don't really need to know much to build a list.
No.
And today, unlike when I got started, today you've got so many tools that make it so easy and fast. I mean, you've got these funnel builders and page builders that come with pre-built email capture pages, and you don't need to code anything. Like when I started, I actually had to put an HTML page together. I knew
Right.
how I had to know how to code. I had to know how to use an FTP, which means I
Right.
had to like physically upload the website onto the internet. Now
Yes.
nobody needs to do that. Now
Mhm.
everything's hosted online, everything's done in a visual interface,
Yeah.
and even a child is able to do it.
Yeah.
So I think people just have this misconception they need to be extremely technical to do it,
Yeah.
and I think that's just a big, big, big myth.
Yeah. All right. So the learning curve is a lot easier now than it used to be. So really, if you don't have an email list, get an email list. Start an email list. So let's say you're starting from zero. What's the most effective way to actually build your email list?
Well, that's a great question. There's tons of different ways to skin this cat, but the one strategy that I've been recommending for many years now is called solo ads, and I write about it in my book, The List Building Lifestyle Confessions of an Email Millionaire. Um, Basically, think about it this way: instead of going out there and trying to write ads and to try and create content, and a lot of people talk about lead magnets and things like that, which might become a whole business on its own and become extremely overwhelming. What you might want to do is you might want to approach people who already have lists and get them to email about your book or product
Mm.
to their existing audience. And what's interesting when you do that is these people that are going to be checking you out are already conditioned to get on email lists. So not
Mhm.
only you're building the best kind of asset, an email list, but you're also getting the best kind of people into it, people who are already conditioned to receive emails. Because um, when somebody's, I guess we all heard the phrase a buyer is a buyer is a buyer. So somebody who's in the habit of buying is more likely to buy the next thing. Well, in the
Right.
same way, an email subscriber, they just enjoy to subscribe to email newsletters and email alerts. So,
Yeah.
I mean, even Amazon uses that to a big extent. Like I get emails every day from Amazon about all sorts of books and nonfiction and Kindle offers and this and that. Why? Because I buy a lot of stuff on Kindle. Like I just go on Amazon and every day there's at least one or two books that I will buy because I'll hear someone talk about them, or I'll be interviewing the author in my podcast, or vice versa. I'll be chatting with somebody and they wrote a book, so I'll go on Amazon and I'll pick it up. And Amazon knows this, and they don't waste time. Oh, you bought a book? Guess what? You're going to get a lot of offers with books in the mail. Why? Because we know that the book buyer is going to buy more books.
Yeah. 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 So you're on Amazon's list. Have you ever found that you're on, you, have you ever opened your email in the morning and thought, why am I on all these lists? Right?
Yeah, sometimes I wonder. Sometimes people add me to lists without asking me, which is actually
Yeah. That's,
still legal in the United States. Not legal in Canada, but still legal in the United States, where
yeah.
it's an opt-out jurisdiction, right? So you can add someone to your list, and as
Yeah.
long as you have an unsubscribe link in your email, you're good. But I think Europe and Canada are a bit different, where they have to explicitly say that they want to be there. And that's the kind of email list that I like most. It's the opt-in lists, where
Yeah.
somebody opts into your list.
Yeah.
But you know what I found? Even if somebody did not necessarily remember that they got on your list, it doesn't stop them from reading the email and checking you out, and
Yeah.
they'll see your name in the inbox. I mean, everybody has Google, right? They can open a new tab, they can Google your name. So it's just, there's no bad thing that can happen if you build a list as an author. It's just,
Yeah.
I can't think of one bad thing unless you do some really shady stuff and somebody
Yeah.
sues you for spamming them. Maybe
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. One of the questions I get from authors is, well, why would anyone join my email list?
Well, let me understand. Let me make sure I understand the question right. So, is the question about, like, what value do I give them so they join, or yeah?
Yeah, so like why do people opt in to email lists and accept emails every day from the same person in their inbox? What, like, so
Hmm.
I think authors are like, and I think there's some imposter syndrome going on there. Like, I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
Why would somebody join my email list? So I think it's a mixture of things. Like, what is the psychology of joining an email list, and what is the value that the author can be sure to bring? I actually think this is a more complex question.
It is for sure, and there is definitely a flavor of imposter syndrome there. But I think it links to the same thing that would stop people from writing a book. Like, who am I to write a book? For many years, that's the question I would ask myself. Now, and it took me a long time to get my book out. So the truth of the matter is, accept it. Just
Yeah.
accept it. I mean, this is something that I had to go through as a teenager when, and I wasn't a natural ladies' man or anything like that. My dad was. He kind of really had the knack for it. And he also ended up cheating on my mom a lot, and like, he really never stopped. But I was like the complete opposite. I was super awkward with girls. And I always asked this question, like, I'm a nobody, I'm a loser. I was
Yeah.
also overweight, and I had glasses. So, I mean, besides computers and kind of being geeky about video games and playing football, or in America, they call it soccer,
Hmm.
I really felt I had no value to offer to women. And whenever I would see a girl with another guy, I'd be like, yeah, he can do it, I can't do it. Like, who am I to do? Why would she agree to date me? And you see, that's such a stupid question, right? Because it diminishes your value. It almost makes it seem like there's no reason for people to value you as a human being. And that's just not true. The fact of the matter is that women, again, though heterosexual women, are attracted to men and vice versa. And a lot of times, if you make the offer, they'll be like, okay, I'll go out with this guy and at least check him out. And so with list building, it's very much the same. People want to get on email lists because it's their preferred method of communicating with businesses and people who've got something to say, including authors, by the way. There's been many, many studies about that. And if you doubt any part of it, I highly recommend, and maybe you can put this URL on the screen right now. I highly recommend checking out a website called emailisnotdead.com, because that's just a one-page website with tons of links out to different studies, articles, and different factual statistics about email being a superior form of communication to pretty much anything else. And there's lots of studies there that you'll see of how consumers in many different niches and markets, not necessarily book readers, but it could be anything, beauty, cars, whatever,
Yeah.
how they explicitly tell us, I want to get offers in the mail. I prefer to be communicated by businesses in the mail. And what's really cool, and that's something you're not going to see on our website, is that over time, it kind of hit me too. And you tell me if this resonates with you, right? So I went through a lot of different stuff in my life in terms of immigrations, purchasing properties, dealing with contracts and lawyers, embassies, like when I had to go to Israeli embassy to renew my passport. So there's more to life, of course, than just writing a book. So there's like other aspects of your life, kindergarten for my kids or school, etc. And what I noticed, especially since moving to Canada, is that everything is in email. In other words,
Mhm.
email is like the official form of communication that replaced the physical letter to an extent. Because when I got notified by the Canadian government about my oath ceremony, came in by email.
Yeah.
When I needed to renew my passport in the Israeli embassy, I set an appointment and I got a confirmation in my email.
Yeah.
When I bought something on Amazon, I got a receipt in my email and I got the shipping notification in my email. And
Yeah.
then when I wanted to refund it, guess what? My refund confirmation came in my email.
Yeah.
If I'm late to pay for my child's kindergarten tuition because I forgot, the kindergarten emails me about it. I
Yeah.
get a ton of different emails from my daughter's school about different projects they're doing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They even got a laptop that they give out to students now. So there's like a lot of stuff that has to do with my life that's really important that happens in the inbox.
Yeah.
So people just want to put stuff in the inbox because that's their habit, that's the normal way of doing things. So when you offer them to stay in touch by email, they're going to say yes. A lot of them will say yes, and
Yeah.
especially if you talk about or write about and produce content about the things that are important to them.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm a gamer, right? I like playing video games, especially shooter games. So I am on the like a notification list about the next Call of Duty game.
Yeah.
There's a new update to a game I'm playing, I'm getting notified by email. Yes, I'm still subscribing to other communities on Discord and YouTube. But you see, when there's an email coming in and it's about Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 or something,
Yeah.
and I've got 15 other emails there, I'm like gonna check out that email first. Like,
Yeah.
oh, when is the game releasing? I really want to know.
Yeah.
So when there's been an opportunity by one of my favorite authors, Mark Manson. So there's a bookshop. I don't remember what it's called, but it had. I think Mark Manson did a talk in the bookshop or a book presentation, and
Yeah.
he signed like 50 copies of his most recent book. And I was like, oh, I want it, and I actually wanted to get it for a friend. And so I immediately went in and I bought it, and I got notified about it by email
Email.
because it was something that interests me.
Yeah.
So why would people get on your list? Just because.
Yeah.
Just accept it as a way for the consumer to want to stay in touch with you because it's effective.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what I think stops some authors, these two questions. Well, how often am I supposed to email people, and what am I supposed to say? I think those are two questions that really stop people. They just like almost like analysis paralysis. Like, they spend hours searching through Google, like, how often should I email and what should I say? And so what is your answer to that? How often should I email and what should I say?
I'm on like a very aggressive end of that spectrum.
Okay.
So let me preface. Um, you can condition your list to expect an email from you in of any frequency, as long as that conditioning is done over time. So some people will email once a month, and that's fine for them, but it really doesn't have to be. So I advocate to email daily, because when you stay top of mind daily, that's like the best thing you can do with your audience. Now,
Yeah.
I personally email 3 times a day, but it comes with a caveat of segmenting, because I would
Mm.
segment my list in different ways. So I have a reason to mail multiple times per day. However, to answer the question, how often should you email?
Yeah.
There's actually a good answer to that, which I've kind of stuck to over the years, and that is whenever you have anything important to say.
Right.
That's something to consider, because
Yeah.
what you have to say about your expertise is important to them because it interests them. Like, if you run a parenting newsletter and I'm a parent and I take my parenting responsibilities seriously and at the same time feel insecure as a parent because let's say I never done this before and my parents screwed their parenting with me and I grew up with a bunch of issues. I want to do a better job. And
Yes.
so that's how I felt with my daughter, who's now
Yeah.
10. And so first off, I purchased a lot of different books about it. I'll
Yep.
subscribe to podcasts about it, but of course I ended up on lots of different lists. So
Yep.
there's a newsletter called, I think it's called Dad or something like that. It has the word dad in it, but I pretty much read it every day, and they do a great job with it because almost every email they talk about some sort of thing that either I asked myself about it
Yep.
some time ago, or something that bothers me, or something that will bother me in the future. For example, during the pandemic, they did a whole series of emails around how to stay fit if you're a busy parent and you can't go out, right? So they did like all kinds of stuff around how to like play with your kids in a way that also makes you a little bit more fit. Sometimes they discuss issues like a parent emailed them and said, "Hey, so my daughter won't eat vegetables. What should I do?" Right, and that's actually a problem that we have. My daughter won't eat vegetable. It's really difficult. So I was like, okay, I wanna check it out.
Yes.
So there's really many different ways to structure your content to your list that we won't be able to, I guess, break all of it down in one podcast. But there's definitely a way for you to email every day for sure.
Yep.
And you should not be shy because these people want to hear from you. They want to hear what you have to say, and your opinion about different things matters. The one advice I will give you, though, is don't try to be vanilla. I think
Mm,
that's, out of those people who mail their list, I see a lot of them try to be kind of like afraid to offend people. So they really tone down their opinions. I think you should be as unapologetic about the things you choose to talk about as you possibly can be. Because the one thing that your subscribers want from you is certainty.
yeah.
Yeah, and they want it, by the way, not only in your emails, but also in your book and in any
Yeah.
podcast you would do, in any webinar you will run, or in any meeting with you face to face.
Wow.
Because the world is very uncertain, it's very confusing, and they get lots of contradicting advice from all sorts of directions.
Yeah.
So they want, if they chose you as the authority on the topic or a subject, they want your black and white opinion. Like if you're running a parenting newsletter and you have a strong stance on whether you should be hitting your child or not hitting your child on the bum every time they do something bad, whatever your opinion is, you need to express it clearly and have a strong stance about it
Yeah.
rather than being apologetic and sort of try to gray it out and really smudge it. You want to be very clear in your communication. That's something that's always going to help you create a much better readership base.
Yes. Have a
And
person.
by the way, I do not advocate hitting kids, just
Yeah.
so.
No, no, no. I didn't. Just an example. Yes. So the answer is have a personality. Like, let that personality shine through. Don't be afraid of who you are. It's like, look, you've got pink hair, you got pink hair. That's great. Pink hair is awesome. Like just be that person. Absolutely. And I think a lot of that is imposter syndrome. So authors out there, if you have an entire book of content, you've got a lot of content you could be sending out daily, weekly. So, don't be afraid to take a piece of your book and send that out. It's not like they won't buy my book if I put something in my book in the email. No, even if you put everything in your book slowly in an email, they'll still buy your book because they don't
Yep.
have it all in one. So, you
I
have,
want to chime in. I want to chime in on that because
yeah,
it's good that you mentioned it. I don't think about it a lot, but you know, in the author context, it's really important. So I mentioned this guy Mark Manson. Now he started out as a blogger, and he produced a lot of content, and he's also got an email list and a newsletter. But what's interesting is that his first book was just a series of his blog posts in a form of a book. Every blog post was a chapter. And I
yeah,
know some people who write really long emails who just turn their emails into a book as well. Me
yeah,
personally, I used email as a testing ground. So my title, the title for my book, the List Building Lifestyle Confessions of an Email Millionaire, that's actually an email subject line that just did really, really well.
yeah,
Yeah, and that's something you can kind of note. And if you have an email list, or if you will have an email list in the future, you can use it to test different titles for your future books,
Yeah.
because the title is important. But in addition, email is extremely forgiving. Like, even if you make a mistake, or say too much or too little, or say the wrong thing in an email, it's you just mail the next day, and mail the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And email is extremely forgiving.
Yeah.
So as a form of communication with your audience, I mean, it beats pretty much everything else.
Yeah. Really good points, Igor. People aren't saving the emails they don't like to review, to remind them why they don't like you. People aren't doing that. If they don't like something, they delete it, they move on, and that's it, right? I have one more question for you, and this is the last thing that I think really stops authors from sending out emails. They're like, well, I just started my list. I only have 10 people. I mean,
Okay.
why bother sending an email now?
It's interesting, because a lot of people have this sort of notion. It's as if they're getting in front of a big audience, and they try to email their list as if they're giving a speech in front of like a stadium full of people. But the reality is, you're only writing to one person. Whoever's going to be reading your email as well as your book will be reading it like to themselves. It's just you and them. It's a dialogue. So as long as you have your perfect reader avatar in your mind,
Yeah.
all you really need to do is imagine it's as if you're having coffee with them, or you're writing a letter like specifically to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter if it's one person or 10. um, it's You still have to write it that way. And what you'll find is, the more personable you make it, the more relatable you make it, and the more intimate you make it,
Yeah.
the more people will appreciate it. And even if only 10 people are getting your email, that's still 10 people. That's still 10 readers. That's still 10 potential book buyers
Yeah.
that you're gonna be able to communicate with. Plus, they can forward emails to their friends. And you know sometimes it's just one idea that I get from an author in an email that really gets me to be like, hmm. It makes you stop, and you're like, hmm. And then you're like, okay, when they got something going on, you're paying attention, because you agree with them. Now, even if you disagree with them, by the way, like if you say something and your audience disagrees with you, they'll still respect you for it. They'll still respect you for having a stance, and they won't unsubscribe. They'll like continue, almost to a point where it's like, let's see what else this person's gonna say. What other craziness they're gonna say this time. A lot of people will subscribe to my list just because of that, just
Yeah.
because they want to see. And that's cool, and that's perfectly cool, because it just gives me another opportunity to convert them at some point.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to ask you, and I do want to ask you how authors can connect with you and get more support from you. But before that, I just want to ask, is there a question that I should have asked, or you would have liked me to ask, or something we're missing that you just want to share with people?
Sure. I think a great question that some authors might be wondering is, should I build a list before or after I wrote my book?
Great question.
And in my opinion, the sooner you can start doing it, the better. Because if you don't have a book, the email list will support it in a way where you're going to have content ideas, because emails beget emails, as my friend Ben Settle says. So you write an email today, and as you're writing it, it'll the string of thought will lead to the next idea, the next idea. Then you'll be writing those emails, and one of them will resonate in a way that's like out of the ordinary, almost be like, wow, I've got so many responses to this one email. And you'd be like, interesting, why? Well, because the topic of that email was something that apparently my audience wonders about. So maybe I should write a book about that, or include that in the chapter, or make it the title, right? Because sometimes it's the one idea that can make something into a bestseller. So even if you don't have a book right now, you should build your list.
Yeah.
Now, if you do have a book, you definitely should be building a list, because if you have one book in you, you probably have another one in you. And if, as we gave an example earlier, you can leverage the list as an asset in your ability to JV with other people, and see if they want to promote you to their list, and vice versa. And you'd be surprised how much more exposure you can get with the list as opposed to without it.
Yeah. That was a great question. Thank you for asking, and like thank you for bringing that up. I often tell authors, like, after you've spent a day writing 1,000 words, go out somewhere and talk about it and get feedback on it. And as you said earlier, test your ideas, right? So thank you very much. That's excellent. So how can authors connect with you? How can they kind of learn more about lists and how you can help them?
A great way to start would be to check out my book. And you can get a free copy of my book shipped to your doorstep if you go to IGOR'Sbook.com.
Oh, nice.
Basically, what I do, I'll cover the printing. I just ask you to chip in on the shipping and handling, and then
Hmm.
I'll also give you the audible version of the book, professionally narrated, so you can listen in your car or
Nice.
when you walk your dog or
Yeah.
cat, parrot, snake, I don't know. As well as I'll give you $3,000 worth of bonuses,
Oh,
where I'm going to give you some introductory material into list building, including how to build your email capture page, some basic understanding of what an email autoresponder is and how you can set it up, and basically set you on the path to start building your own list. So I would highly recommend you go and check it out at igorsbook.com.
yeah.
Or if you prefer to get it on Amazon, just go on Amazon and search for list building lifestyle. You'll be able to find both my podcast as well as my book, and you can check out either one of them. But the book is definitely recommended because it's structured in a way where it just introduces you to this world in a much better way than the podcast. Because the podcast, it's a place where I interview list builders, people who build lists. So this is a place to go if you want to get inspired, if you want to hear what it's like when you have a list, either big or small, how to make the most out of it, and just see just how many people are actually building lists right now and are benefiting greatly from it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you very much. Really appreciate that. Thank you for coming today. This is a really important topic. So if you're out there listening, take some notes and grab the book and get the tools, because this can really make a difference in your life. And now we know you don't just have to sell them in 14 days. This is about building, getting them to know you and trust you, so that they do want to purchase from you and get your support in whatever area you support people. Thank you, Igor, for coming today. I really appreciate it.
It's my
Um,
pleasure.
Thank you. And so, thank you for joining us today here at Author Nation. We are starting season 2 live next Thursday. We'll be talking to Mike Raber. We're going to be talking about author wealth, because that is another area where authors seem to really struggle with author finances. So join us then. And if you are looking to start writing your book, go to authornation.online and grab your planning checklist. Yes, that will put you on my list, and I will be there to help you throughout the entire process. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next Thursday.